Binding vows are a staple of the Jujutsu Kaisen power system. You give something up to get something else. But who is validating that transaction? Who is determining that that is equivalent exchange? Let's talk about that and a few other anime-friendly questions from you guys. So this first question today comes from Zarings, and I'm going to move out of the way for anybody that wants to read the whole thing, but this isn't even the whole comment. I kind of had to stitch together the most important parts, but he essentially wants to know who's out here validating these binding vows. And for anybody that needs a refresher or a breakdown on how binding vows work, I have other videos that fully dive into that subject. So for this, we're just going to focus on this one aspect of it. But real quick, binding vow again is just giving something up in order to receive something else, right? And you can make binding vows with other people, in which case it's obvious who's validating it. It's the people involved, right? If you and I are trying to come to a binding vow and I don't think it's fair, I'm just not going to agree to it, right? So once we agree, fairness has been determined. However, if I'm just making a binding vow personally, just for myself, then who determines if that's fair, right? And there's basically a few interpretations of how this could work, but Gege has never explicitly come out and explained this to us. So either there's some sort of god, and I don't necessarily literally mean a god, but it could be a literal god, but just some sort of figure in the JJK universe that is the overseer of this fairness, right? And it's up to their discretion to determine if whatever is being exchanged is equal. Or a second option could be that it's just some kind of innate truth of the universe, right? However you want to think about it, like a karmic balance or just, again, a fundamental law of how things exist. And, in the same way mathematics is like a fundamental truth of the universe, the rules of binding vows could be similar, right? And then a third option would be it's just on a person by person basis, meaning if you and I both made an identical binding vow, I could theoretically give up less to get it if my interpretation and understanding was different than yours. For example, let's say you give up an arm to get 10% stronger. Maybe I just give up a fingernail to get 10% stronger because of how we differently view the universe. So, in my opinion, I think the second option is most likely just because there is a lot of religious influence and certain gods mentioned at time in JJK, but it doesn't seem to be that type of verse or that type of story where there's going to be some omniscient, creator or, overlord eventually revealed that is overseeing all of the binding vows. It just doesn't feel like that type of story. So I think it's just kind of like a sixth sense, again, a fundamental law of the universe that determines this. It's going to know, what you're trying to get is equal to what you're giving up. So I think it is just this, again, fundamental law of the universe that determines if what you're trading is actually equal to what you want. But I do think even though that's the case, there's nuance for binding vows between people, even the same binding vow. And what I mean by that is let's take Shaq and Kevin Hart, for example. And let's say both are doing a binding vow to sacrifice their legs for something. Well, Shaq's going to get more bang for his buck because his legs are more valuable, right? Let's pretend this is prime Shaq. And, if he sacrifices his legs, that's like his livelihood as a professional basketball player. So that sacrifice is going to be worth more than Kevin Hart's, who as a comedian doesn't need his legs as much. And to address a couple of other things Zarings was asking, he was basically like, how do you train your binding vows if it is just kind of this fundamental thing? And basically, the stronger you are, the stronger your binding vows can become. To again cite back to the Shaq and Kevin Hart example, if Kevin Hart worked his whole life to become a better basketball player, then he could make a better binding vow in that regard, if that makes sense. Similarly, we know Miwa made a binding vow to put all of her future strength into that sword strike, and it failed, right? But if Miwa had been stronger, had been a more competent swordsman, then that binding vow would have been stronger because it's based on her own strength. And to that point, people also ask, well, what can you do with the binding vow? Can I just, trade my feet for the ability to fly? And no, and we do get kind of in the weeds and it's kind of nuanced here, but you basically can't gain anything from a binding vow that you weren't already capable of in some form, if that makes sense. Again, to cite back to the Miwa example, yeah, she basically leverages all of her future strength, but it's still her strength that's being leveraged. Or, in Nanami's example, where he's stronger at night when it's overtime, he only gets that strength because he's sacrificed his own strength earlier during the day. So it's not as if Nanami becomes Gojo level. He can only really get what's in the realm of possibility for him to begin with, if that makes sense. And continuing in this vein, we have this question from Brian, who wants to know if Toto would be able to obtain a heavenly restriction via a binding vow since he lost his boogie woogie. And no, it wouldn't work this way because heavenly restrictions basically do operate on the principle of a binding vow, give something up to get something else, but they're completely out of your control, which is why they're called heavenly restrictions. The implication being that this was placed on you in heaven like before you were born, so just completely out of your control. And so Toto can't replicate this because being heavenly restricted in the same way Toji is not something in his realm of possibility, right? So the same way Mekamaru's heavenly restricted couldn't be replicated by a binding vow, it's just not in the normal realm of existence for somebody, so there isn't something they could really give up to replicate that, if that makes sense. And also, I don't think Toto's cursed energy is gone. I think he still has cursed energy, it's just that his technique is gone. And I've actually made a couple of videos talking about what Toto could theoretically maybe do to get back in the game. Could he make some sort of binding vow to maybe get his curse technique back or at least become relevant again? And I do think that's possible, but he just couldn't get a heavenly restriction from a binding vow. And continuing that thought on your second question here, if Yuki was successful in getting rid of all of cursed energy, would everyone be heavenly restricted? And no, I don't think so, because I think, again, the heavenly restriction is just something completely out of people's control. And if we did somehow just like snap our fingers and cursed energy was gone, I think it would be more likely that everyone was just normal as opposed to being like Toji all of a sudden. And next up, we got another question about binding vows from Volcanics, who wants to know if you could use one related to your soul. Could you theoretically give up a part of your soul to regain another part? Like, could Toto potentially get back his curse technique by doing something like that with his soul? And I do think binding vows could be used with the soul. Like, that could be used as a bargaining chip in some form or fashion. But I don't think you could use it to heal another part of your soul. And I think you would need to have like a really good understanding of the soul to be able to use it in binding vows. But I don't think you could heal with it like in the Toto example, because we've never seen anybody normally heal like normal damage, not soul damage, with a binding vow. Like we've never seen anybody like cut off their right leg in order to regrow their left leg. Does that make sense? Especially if they didn't have the ability to heal to begin with. So like somebody that doesn't know reverse curse technique, I don't think can use a binding vow to heal themselves, which we could cite back to the earlier explanation of what I was talking about, where whatever you're gaining from this binding vow has to be something like that you can actually achieve, something in your wheelhouse. So if you can't do RCT, you don't know how to heal your soul, then you won't be able to gain that from a binding vow. That's my understanding, at least. And then your second question, do you think Yuji's soul damage also works on non-reincarnated sorcerers? And yes, I do. For example, Mahito, right? The first person we saw this soul damage on. So you don't have to be a reincarnated sorcerer. I think as long as you have a soul, Yuji can damage it. Now, as far as how that works and the nuance and like, are they permanently damaged or do people's souls, like, as long as they're not like sliced up or something, just passively regenerate? These are things we don't really have the answer to. Does Yuji intentionally have to hurt your soul? There's a passive effect. So I think, to answer your question, yes, he can do it on anyone, but the nuance of how it works, we still don't really know. Next up, we got this question from Triple Saka, who wants to know why the disaster curses didn't become vegetables during Gojo's 0.2-second domain expansion in Shibuya. And the simple answer is that they did. It just didn't affect them as badly as humans, and that's because cursed brains are just different from humans. But they were vegetables for 299 seconds. And then finally, I want to throw in this quick one from Winston, who wants to know if I can explain who Tsumiki's parents are. So yeah, let me break this down. Alright, sorry if this is hard to read, I just threw it together really quick. Basically what's happening here is you've got two families that come together. So Megami and his sister Tsumiki are step-siblings. They're actually not related by blood. So Megami was born to Toji and his mother, but his mother passed away shortly after he was born. Tsumiki was born to her mother and father, who was not Toji. We don't know what happened to her birth dad, but later Toji and Tsumiki's mom get together, and that's why they are brother and sister. And then as far as what happened to Tsumiki's parents, well, again, her birth dad, we don't really know, probably a deadbeat, which led her mom to get with Toji. And we obviously know what happened to Toji. Gojo took him out. And here in this panel, Megami actually says he hasn't seen Tsumiki's mother in a while either. His assumption is that Toji and Tsumiki's mother just ran off and were being deadbeats. So basically, they raised themselves. That's going to do it for this one, y'all. Thank you so much for the support. And as always, thank you for watching.